When Elon Musk received a late-night call from his estranged father asking for help, he never expected it would change both their lives forever after years of not speaking. Elon Musk sounded desperate, claiming he had made an amazing discovery that dangerous people wanted to steal what happened when Elon flew to South Africa to help his father the truth behind Errol's invention, the healing of old family wounds, and Elon's final decision left everyone who heard about it completely speechless. The clock on the wall read 11:42 p.m. But Elon Musk barely noticed time meant little when his mind was deep in the puzzle of making humans a multi-planet species. The only light in his SpaceX office came from the blue glow of his computer screen, showing the plans for the newest Mars rocket. Just a few more tweaks, Elon muttered to himself. Rubbing his tired eyes, he reached for his cold coffee and grimaced at the taste. 3 days, with barely any sleep, but he couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close to solving the fuel efficiency problem. The sudden ring of his phone cut through the silence like a knife. Elon frowned. Nobody called his private number this late, unless there was trouble at one of his companies. He glanced at the screen and froze. Elon Musk, the caller ID read his father. Elon's heart pounded in his chest. They hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, not since that disaster of a birthday call that ended with angry words on both sides. The phone rang again and again. Memories flashed through Elon's mind. His father's harsh criticism when he shared his first business idea. The rare, proud smile when Elon won the science fair. The way Errol had laughed when Elon said he wanted to build rockets someday. Foolish dreams, his father had said. On the 5th ring, Elon picked up the phone. Hello? His voice came out rougher than he intended. Elon, his father's voice, sounded different. Weaker, with none of the strong confidence Elon remembered. Thank you for answering. It's late here, Elon said, checking the time in South Africa. Early morning there. I know, Errol replied. I wouldn't call if it wasn't important. A heavy silence stretched, between them filled with unspoken words and old hurts. What do you need? Elon finally asked. His father took a deep breath on the other end. I need your help. Son. Son, he rarely called Elon. That what kind of help? Elon stood up and walked to the window looking out at the California KN. I can't explain over the phone. It's complicated. Errol's voice dropped to almost a whisper, and possibly dangerous. Elon's grip tightened on the phone. Are you in trouble? Is this about money? No, his father said quickly. Nothing like that. It's much bigger. A cough rattled through the speaker, and Elon realized with a shock that his father sounded ill. Are you sick? He asked. I'm fine. Errol insisted, though his voice suggested otherwise. Elon, I know we've had our differences. I know I wasn't always the father you deserved. Elon's eyebrows shot up. In 49 years. He had never heard his father admit such a thing. But I'm asking you to trust me. Just this once. Errol continued, I need you to come to South Africa as soon as possible. You want me to fly to South Africa. Now Elon ran a hand through his messy hair. I have companies to run. I can't just drop everything because you're being mysterious. It's about legacy. Elon, something, in his father's voice, changed yours and mine. I've discovered something that could change everything, but there are people who want to take it, to use it, for the wrong reasons. What are you talking about? What discovery? Not over the phone. Errol insisted, his voice suddenly sharp with worry. Please, son, I wouldn't ask if there was anyone else I could turn to. Elon closed his eyes. The last thing he wanted was to get pulled into one of his father's schemes. Elon Musk had always been brilliant, but difficult, an engineer with big ideas and a bigger ego. Kind of like me. A small voice in Elon's head whispered, when Elon asked, already regretting the question. "As soon as you can get here," his father said, relief evident in his voice. "Come alone. Don't tell anyone why you're coming." Elon's suspicion flared. "That sounds sketchy. Even for you. I promise. I'll explain everything when you arrive. Just be careful who you trust." The call ended. With awkward goodbyes and Elon's reluctant promise to text when he had flight details for several minutes, he stood by the window phone still in hand, wondering if he was making a mistake. His relationship with his father had always been complicated. Errol could be charming, even caring at times, but also manipulative and cruel. He'd hurt Elon's mother, hurt the whole family with his selfishness, and yet something in his father's voice sounded genuinely afraid. Mr. Musk. Elon turned to see Zara Taylor, his assistant, standing in the doorway. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she looked as fresh as if it were the middle of the day. "Not nearly midnight. I have those urgent contract revisions for the Tesla battery suppliers," she said, holding up a tablet. Then she frowned. "Is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just an unexpected call," Elon said, setting his phone down. "Zara, I need you to clear my schedule for the next week and arrange for the jet to be ready. Tomorrow morning." Tomorrow her eyebrows shot up. "But you have the NASA meeting and the board presentation, and all of it needs to be postponed or handled virtually." Elon's mind was already racing ahead, calculating time zones and flight plans. "I need to go to South Africa. Family emergency." Zara nodded, already typing notes into her tablet. She'd been with him long enough to know when not to ask questions. "Should I make hotel arrangements?" she asked. "Yes. Pretoria." Elon turned back to his computer, saving his rocket designs, and, "Zara, keep this trip quiet. No social media, no press, as far as anyone knows. I'm working on a special project, and unavailable." "Understood," she said, though curiosity was clear in her eyes. "Anything else you need before tomorrow?" Elon shook his head, then paused. "Actually, yes. Find everything you can about any recent technological breakthroughs or unusual patent filings in South Africa in the last year, especially anything related to energy," as Zara left to make arrangements. Elon stared at his phone, wondering what his father had discovered that was worth bridging the painful gap between them and why it had him so afraid. Elon stared out the U-window of his private jet as it soared over the Atlantic Ocean. The sky had darkened hours ago, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept circling back to his father's call, and the worry in Errol's voice. 14 more hours, he muttered, checking his watch. Plenty of time to second-guess this entire trip. He leaned back in the leather seat and closed his eyes. Immediately, memories flooded in, some he hadn't thought about in years. Little Elon, just 8 years old, proudly showing his father the small robot he built from spare parts. "Not bad," Errol had said, examining it with an engineer's critical eye, "but the wiring is sloppy. Fix it, and then show me again." Elon remembered the sting of those words, how he'd stayed up all night rewiring the robot, determined to earn his father's approval. When he showed Errol again, his father had simply nodded and said, "Better." That was Elon Musk. Brilliant, demanding, and nearly impossible to please. There were good memories, too. The time Errol taught 12-year-old Elon to fly a small plane, his father's hands steady on the controls as they soared over the South African landscape, or the Sunday afternoons they spent taking apart engines together. Errol patiently explaining how each component worked. Understanding the parts means you can rebuild anything, his father always said. But for every good memory, there were 3 painful ones. The shouting matches between his parents, The cutting remarks about Elon's dreams, the day Errol laughed when 13-year-old Elon said he wanted to build spaceships. You need to be realistic. His father had said, focus on something practical. Elon opened his eyes, the memory still sharp enough to hurt. Look at me now, Dad. He thought I build spaceships for a living. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. Marcus Reed, the flight attendant, stood in the cabin doorway with a steaming cup. Thought you might like some tea, Sir Marcus said, placing the cup on the table beside Elon. You've been awake since takeoff. Thank you, Elon said, grateful for the distraction, any chance of turbulence ahead, clear skies all the way to Cape Town. Marcus replied. He hesitated, then added, if you don't mind me saying, sir, you seem troubled. Elon picked up the tea, letting the warmth seep into his hands. Just family matters, complicated ones. Marcus nodded knowingly. My father and I didn't speak for 8 years. Stubborn old man thought I was wasting my life traveling the world as cabin crew. What changed? Elon asked. He got sick. Cancer. Marcus's eyes grew distant, suddenly. All those arguments seemed so small compared to the time we were losing. We made peace before he passed. The words hung in the air as Marcus excused himself to return to his duties. Elon sipped his tea, thinking. About the call that had set this journey in motion, had his father sounded ill, the thought tightened something in his chest. Despite everything, Errol was still his father, the man who taught him to question everything, to take things apart, to understand them, to push beyond what others thought possible. He was also the man who had broken their family apart with his harsh words and harsher actions. Elon reached for his laptop, determined to distract himself with work. The folder Zara had prepared before his departure contained everything she could find about recent technological breakthroughs in South Africa. Nothing stood out as revolutionary. Certainly nothing that would have powerful people trying to steal it. As his father had implied, what had Errol discovered? And why call Elon now after all this time? As the plane continued its journey. Through the night, Elon's thoughts drifted to his childhood home in Pitor, the sprawling house with its swimming pool and large garage where Errol kept his tools, the backyard where Elon sometimes escaped when his father's. Criticism became too much. He remembered being 9 years old, hiding behind the garden shed, after Errol had called him careless for breaking a valuable tool. Elon had stayed there for hours, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky, imagining what it would be like to visit them someday. Problem with you, boy, his father had said, when he finally found him, is you spend too much time with your head in the clouds. It was meant as criticism, but looking back, Elon realized it was one of the truest things his father ever said about him. The memory brought an unexpected smile to his face. Maybe that was why he'd agreed to this trip, not just out of duty or curiosity, but because deep down, some small part of him still wanted his father to see that those dreams hadn't been foolish after all. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe despite everything he still cared. What happened to the complicated, brilliant, difficult man who had helped shape him for better and worse? Elon closed his laptop and leaned his head back, finally feeling sleep. Approaching as the tree plane carried him closer to his past, one question followed him into his dreams. What would he find when he landed? Elon blinked against the bright African sun as he stepped off his plane. The familiar heat hit him immediately, bringing back a flood of sensations he hadn't experienced in years. The distinctive smell of dry grass and dust, the quality of light that seemed sharper, more intense than in California he was, back in South Africa, after moving through the private terminal and handling the minimal customs procedures. That came with his status. Elon found himself standing outside the airport, scanning the row of rental cars. Mr. Musk, a young attendant, approached, holding out keys. "Your vehicle is ready." Sir Elon had specifically requested something ordinary. Not the luxury car they'd initially tried to give him. The dark blue sedan waiting for him was perfect. Nice enough to be comfortable, but not flashy enough to draw attention. "Thank you," he said. Taking the keys 20 minutes later, Elon was driving through Pretoria's streets, following a route burned into his memory. Despite the decades away, he hadn't planned to visit his old neighborhood, but found himself turning onto familiar roads, pulled by an invisible force toward his past. Santon Road looked different. More shops, new buildings. But the rhythm of the place remained unchanged. Street vendors sold colorful wares under umbrellas. Children in school uniforms walked home in small groups. The jacaranda trees still lined many streets, though they weren't in bloom this time of year when he passed his old school. Elon slowed the car, Water Clough House. Preparatory school looked smaller than he remembered on that playground he'd endured. The worst bullying of his life, a group of boys had once pushed him down a concrete staircase, sending him to the hospital. His father's response, "Toughen up." The world is harsh. Elon drove on, turning onto the street. Where he'd spent his early years, he stopped across from the house where he'd lived until his parents' divorce. Someone had painted it a different color and built a higher wall around it. But the shape was unmistakable in that garage. He'd watched his father work on engineering projects, absorbing knowledge like a sponge in that bedroom window. The second from the left, he'd read books about rockets and computers late into the night, dreaming of changing the world. A car honked behind him, and Elon realized he'd been staring too long. He continued toward his hotel, his mind swirling with memories both warm and painful. The Grand Summit Hotel rose, like a gleaming tower in the city center, far enough from his father's current residence to give Elon space to think. As the valet took his car, Elon pulled his cap lower and shouldered his single bag. Despite his efforts to stay under the radar, he noticed the quick double takes from hotel staff who recognized him. "Good afternoon, sir," said the woman at the reception desk, her professional smile widening slightly as she realized who stood before her. "Welcome to the Grand Summit." "Thank you," Elon said, handing over his passport. "I'd appreciate discretion during my stay. Of course, Mr. Musk, we pride ourselves on privacy," she typed quickly on her computer. "We've prepared our executive suite for you as requested. Top floor, excellent security," as she processed his check-in. Elon noticed the nameplate on her desk. "Lo El Nadu, Hotel Manager. Is this your first visit to Pretoria?" Mr. Musk Lungi asked, her eyes never leaving her computer screen, though Elon could tell she knew the answer first. "In many years," he replied, "I grew up here." "Yes? South Africa is proud to claim you as one of our own." She handed him a key card, though I imagine home feels different after. "So, much time away? It's strange." Elon admitted familiar, but not. Looney nodded, her eyes meeting his with unexpected warmth. "I returned to PTIR after 15 years abroad. It took time to feel like home again." Something in her understanding tone made Elon add, "I'm here to see family. Family connections are precious," she said. "Even the difficult ones fate." When Elon looked surprised, she added with a smile, "Just an observation from someone who's had her share of complicated reunions." A hotel attendant appeared to escort Elon to his suite as he turned to. Go Lungi spoke again. "Mr. Musk, if you need anything during your stay, anything at all, please call me directly." She handed him a business card. "Pretoria has changed, but some things remain the same name, including who you can trust." Her words seemed to carry extra weight, but Before Elon could ask what she meant, the attendant was already leading him toward the elevator. The suite was spacious and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the city. Elon dropped his bag and walked to the window, taking in the urban landscape. That stretched toward the distant hills where his father now lived tomorrow morning. That's when he'd agreed to meet Errol. Part of him wanted to drive there immediately and demand answers, but the rational side of his brain insisted he needed rest. First, better to face his father. With a clear head, Elon ordered a simple meal from room service and set up his laptop. He spent the next few hours checking in with his companies, reviewing reports Zara had prepared, and researching anything that might explain his father's mysterious call. Nothing made sense. Errol had money, not billionaire wealth, but enough to live comfortably. He wasn't involved in politics or any high-profile projects that might create enemies. What could he possibly have discovered that would put him in danger? Evening fell. Elon stood on the balcony, watching lights flicker across the city. The stars appeared above, brighter than they ever looked in Los Angeles. The same stars he'd gazed at as a boy dreaming of space. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Elon opened it, expecting hotel information or perhaps a message from Zara. Instead, he read, "Don't trust everything he tells you." Elon stared at the screen, a chill running through him. Despite the warm evening air, he tried calling the number, but it went straight to an automated message saying the number didn't exist. Who had sent this? How did they know why he was here? Elon stepped back inside and closed the balcony door, suddenly aware of how exposed he felt. He checked that his room door was locked, then sat on the edge of the bed. The phone still in his hand. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Whatever game his father was playing, Elon intended to get answers, and if those answers put either of them in danger, well, he hadn't built multiple revolutionary companies by backing down from challenges. As he prepared for bed, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. That somewhere in the glittering city below, someone was very interested in this reunion. Between father and son, morning came with a brilliant African sunrise that painted Elon's hotel room in shades of gold. He'd slept poorly, his dreams filled with jumbled memories and nameless warnings. The mysterious text message still bothered him, but in the clear light of day, he decided it could have been sent by anyone. A journalist fishing for a story, perhaps, or even a prank. After a quick breakfast and 3 cups of strong coffee, Elon got into his rental car and entered his father's address into the GPS. The route took him away from the city center, toward the more remote outskirts where properties were larger and more private. As the urban landscape gave way to rolling countryside, Elon rehearsed what he would say to his father. He needed answers, clear ones, not the cryptic half-explanations Errol was known for. If there was real danger, they would face it together. If this was some kind of manipulation, Elon would be on the next flight back to California. The GPS directed him onto a narrow dirt road that wound through tall grass. At the end stood a security gate with a camera. Elon rolled down his window and pressed the intercom button. "Yes," came a crackly voice he instantly recognized. "It's Elon." The gate swung open. Without another word, the house that came into view wasn't what Elon expected. He remembered his father living in a modern, well-maintained home in an upscale neighborhood. This place was older, more isolated. A single-story ranch house with a wide porch and peeling paint. The grounds looked neglected, with overgrown gardens and a driveway in need of repair. Errol was waiting on the porch steps. As Elon parked, the sight of his father made him pause. Elon Musk had always been a commanding presence. Tall, confident, impeccably dressed, the man who stood before him now seemed smaller, somehow thinner. He wore simple khaki pants and a button-down shirt that hung loosely on his frame, His hair had gone completely white. "You came?" Errol said, as Elon approached, not a greeting exactly, but an acknowledgement tinged with surprise. I said I would. Elon stopped at the bottom of the steps, studying his father's face. "You look different. Getting old happens to everyone, even me." Errol attempted a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Come inside. We have a lot to discuss." The interior of the house was cooler then. Outside, but just as worn as the exterior, faded furniture, outdated appliances in the kitchen walls that needed fresh paint, but it was clean and organized in the meticulous way Elon remembered from childhood, everything in its proper place. Coffee aromas already moving toward the kitchen. "Please?" While his father prepared the drinks, Elon wandered into the living room, taking in the strange mix of familiar and unknown. Some pieces, a leather armchair, a wooden chest set he recognized from his childhood home. Others were new to him. One wall caught his attention. It was covered with papers, diagrams, and photographs, like something from a detective movie. Elon stepped closer, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Technical drawings, newspaper clippings, maps of what looked like rural areas. "My work wall," Errol said from behind him, holding 2 steaming mugs. "Not very organized." "I'm afraid, what exactly is your work these days?" Elon asked. Accepting the coffee and gesturing toward the wall, Errol didn't answer. Immediately, he settled into the armchair. With a slight wince that suggested physical discomfort, "Let's start with honesty," Elon said, sitting across from his father. "Are you ill?" Errol's eyebrows rose. "What makes you ask that you've lost weight? You moved to an isolated house. You winced when you sat down. A flicker of the old pride crossed Errol's face. "You always were observant." He took a sip of coffee before continuing. "Yes, I have some health issues. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but progressing." Elon nodded, feeling a complicated mix of concern and vindication at having his suspicion. "Confirmed. But that's not why I asked you here." Errol continued, "I need your help with something much bigger than my health. I'm listening." Errol set down his mug. "For the past 5 years, I've been working on a new energy technology, something that could change how power is generated in remote areas." Elon kept his expression neutral, though surprise flashed through him. His father had been an engineer. Yes, but had never shown interest in renewable energy or humanitarian projects. "What kind of technology?" "A portable fusion reactor," Errol said. Watching Elon's face carefully, small-scale safe, capable of powering a village for years with minimal fuel, Elon nearly laughed. Fusion, every major research institution in the world has been working on that for decades. 80s with billions in funding, and they're all taking the wrong approach. Errol said, his voice gaining strength. "They're trying to create massive reactors. I've been working on miniaturization, using principles that the big research teams ignore because they don't scale up." Elon sat down his coffee. "Dad, fusion it's not something you develop. In your home workshop, I know how it sounds," Errol admitted. "But I've made real progress. That's why I need your protection." "Protection from what?" "There are people who've learned about my work. People with resources who want to take it and use it for profit rather than help communities that need power." Elon frowned, remembering the text message. "Don't trust everything he tells you." "Show me," he said. Errol led him through the house to a side door. As they walked, Elon noticed several things that seemed out of place: expensive electronic equipment. That contrasted with the shabby furniture, a row of prescription bottles on the kitchen counter, and a bedroom that appeared to be in use but contained clothes too small for Errol. Outside, they crossed a dusty yard to what had once been a large garage or barn. Errol unlocked 3 separate locks, before pushing open the heavy door. "My workshop," he said, flipping on lights to reveal a space that looked nothing like the rest of the property. The large room was filled with equipment, some familiar to Elon, some he couldn't identify at first glance. Computers lined one wall. Complex machinery occupied the center. Whiteboards covered with equations surrounded them. Elon walked slowly around the space, his expert eye taking in details. Some of the equipment was handmade, but precisely crafted. Other pieces appeared to be modified from standard laboratory tools. Everything was organized with obsessive care. "How long have you been working on this?" Elon asked, examining a set of blueprints on a workbench. 7 years. Errol replied, "Most of that time in." "Secret. Why didn't you ever mention it to me?" His father's expression shifted, showing a vulnerability Elon had rarely seen. "Would you have believed me? The father who told you space travel was a foolish dream, suddenly claiming to have solved fusion energy." The irony wasn't lost on Elon. "So why tell me now?" "Because it works," Errol said simply. "At least the prototype does. And now I need help taking it further, making it safe enough for wide employment." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I wanted to prove myself first. I wanted to be worthy of being called your father." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with decades of complicated history. Elon turned away, studying the equipment more carefully to hide his reaction. Parts of the design did seem innovative, unconventional approaches to problems that had stumped fusion researchers for years. But was it real, or just an old man's delusion? "I'll think about how I can help," Elon finally said, still unsure what to believe. "But I have more questions." "Of course," Errol nodded. "But now you understand why I couldn't explain over the phone and why I'm worried about who might be watching." As they walked back to the house, Elon glanced toward the distant road. The feeling of being observed returned stronger than before. Whatever his father had discovered, real or imagined, Elon was now part of it, and someone was definitely paying attention back inside the house. Elon paced the living room, his mind racing. His father sat quietly, waiting for him to process everything he'd seen in the workshop. "Let me get this straight," Elon finally said. "You believe you've developed small-scale fusion technology. That actually works." "I don't just believe it," Errol replied. "I've tested it small scale, but it generates more energy than it consumes. That would be a scientific breakthrough, worth billions," Elon said. "Maybe trillions." Errol nodded, "which is why certain people are very interested in taking it." "These people do they have names?" "One does. Owen Blackwood. He runs BCG International, a company that claims to develop infrastructure in developing countries." Elon frowned. "Claims to they build just enough to make good publicity photos," Errol said bitterly. "Then they extract resources and leave. They've done it across Africa. Mining operations mostly." Elon pulled out his phone, searching for information on Blackwood. Several photos appeared: a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit, smiling alongside various political figures. "How did he find out about your work?" Elon asked. "I needed some specialized materials, had to order them through channels that aren't entirely private." Errol sighed. "Blackwood has connections everywhere. Once he understood what I might be building, he made contact and offered to buy your technology. At first, when I refused, things became less friendly." Errol gestured toward the window. "That's why I moved here, more isolated, easier to secure." Elon rubbed his temples, feeling a headache forming. Part of him still doubted his father's claims. Fusion energy was the holy grail of power generation. Clean, nearly limitless energy. Scientists with far more resources had failed to make it viable. And yet his father had always been brilliant, difficult and complicated. Yes, but genuinely innovative when it came to engineering. Let me see the actual device. Elon said, not just the workshop, the reactor itself. Errol nodded and led him back outside in the workshop. He unlocked a separate room. Elon hadn't noticed before, inside was a single table, holding what looked like a metal sphere, about the size of a beach ball, connected to various instruments and cooling systems. "This is it?" Elon asked, surprised by its compact size. "The third prototype," Errol said, with a hint of pride. "The first two taught me what not to do." Elon studied the device carefully, mentally comparing it to what he knew about fusion aria. Factor designs, the approach was unconventional, but not impossible if it worked. It would indeed be revolutionary. "The containment field is the breakthrough," Errol explained, pointing to components everyone else uses massive magnets. "I found a way to create a stable field, using much less energy for the next hour." Elon examined the prototype, while his father explained the technical details. Despite his initial skepticism, Elon found himself impressed. The design was elegant and innovative, addressing problems that had stumped larger research teams, but there were flaws, too serious ones. "The radiation shielding is insufficient," Elon said, pointing to several areas, "and this cooling system wouldn't handle a sustained reaction. It's dangerous." "I know," Errol admitted. "That's why I need your help. You have access to materials and expertise." "I don't?" Elon sat on a nearby stool, weighing his options. If the technology was real, it could change millions of lives, providing clean power to communities that had never had electricity. But it could also be weaponized or exploited if it fell into the wrong hands. "Why now?" Elon asked. "You've been working on this for 7 years." "Why call me this week?" Errol hesitated. "Blackwoods. People have been watching the property. I've spotted them 3 times," and he paused. "My condition is getting worse. I may not have much time to finish this." "Your condition, a rare neurodegenerative disease. Progressive, not much. The doctors can do." The blunt mission hit Elon harder than he expected. Despite their difficult relationship, the thought of his father's mortality created an ache in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick when you called? Would you have come if you thought I just wanted a deathbed reconciliation?" Errol asked, his voice matter-of-fact rather than self-pitying. Elon didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I'll think about how to help," he finally said. Standing up, "I need time to verify some of these design elements, maybe consult with experts without revealing what it's for." "Thank you," Errol said. Simply as they walked back toward the house, Elon stopped and turned to his father. "One more question. Why are you really doing this? You never cared about humanitarian projects before." Errol was quiet for a long moment. "I've made many mistakes, especially with you," he finally said. "This is my last chance to do something good." The words sounded sincere, but Elon had been disappointed by his father too many times to fully trust him. Still, the technology in that workshop could be world-changing. "If it worked, I'll call you tomorrow," Elon said as he prepared to leave. "Be careful," his father warned. "Blackwood has resources, and he's not used to hearing no back in his car, driving toward the hotel." Elon couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. The prototype looked promising but dangerous. His father seemed genuine, but had hidden things before whatever he decided to do next. Elon knew one thing for certain. He was now involved in something much bigger than a family reunion. Elon arrived back at his hotel with his thoughts in turmoil. He nodded to the D-man and headed straight for the elevator, eager for the privacy of his suite. The lobby was busier than when he'd left that morning, filled with tourists and business people going about. Their day, as he waited for the elevator, a woman approached him. She was tall and confident, wearing a crisp blazer over jeans with short braided hair and intelligent eyes that studied him carefully. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice low but firm. "My name is Thandi Eki. I'm a journalist with the African Science Monitor. Could I have a word?" Elon's guard went up immediately. "I'm not doing interviews during this trip. It's a private visit." The elevator doors opened and he stepped inside to his annoyance. Thandi followed him. "It's about your father," she said as the doors closed and his work with experimental energy technology. Elon kept his face neutral, but his pulse quickened. "How did she know about that?" "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Thandi smiled slightly. "I think you do. Elon Musk has been developing an unusual energy device at his property. Outside Pretoria recently, he's been meeting with some interesting business associates. The elevator reached Elon's floor, and he stepped out." Thandi followed Becky. "I'm not doing an interview, and I'm not discussing my father with you, even if his associates have concerning backgrounds." She kept pace beside him as he walked down the hallway. Owen Blackwood's company has a history of exploiting resources. In vulnerable communities, 3 of his previous projects resulted in environmental disasters that were covered up. Elon stopped at his door keycard in hand. "If you're investigating Blackwood, that has nothing to do with me." "It does. If you're helping your father work with him, I'm not." Elon opened his door, then turned to face her, and this conversation is over just one question. "Then," Thandi said quickly, "how much do you really know about your father's recent activities? Because some of his meetings suggest goodbye." McKee Elon stepped inside, died, and closed the door firmly alone in his suite. He immediately called hotel security to ensure the journalist wouldn't be allowed back up to his floor. Then he paced the room, his mind racing. How had she known about his father's project? About Blackwood, his phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number again, but different from the previous one. When he opened it, his blood ran cold. The message contained 4 photographs. Each showed his father meeting with a tall, distinguished-looking man. Elon recognized from his earlier internet search. Owen Blackwood, in the last photo. They appeared to be arguing with Blackwood's finger pointed at Errol's chest. The message text simply read, "Thought. You should see." This Elon tried calling the number, but like before it didn't connect. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, staring at the photos. What was really going on? Here had his father been honest about his relationship with Blackwood. The photos suggested they knew each other better than Errol had implied. After a moment's thought, Elon called Zara in California. "Despite the time difference, I need everything you can find on Owen Blackwood and BCG International." He told her when she answered financial records, news articles, lawsuits, anything that might show their business practices or interests in energy technology, use it. Zara replied, not questioning why her boss needed this information in the middle of the night. "How urgent, as soon as possible. And Zara, dig into my father's finances too. Property records, business connections, anything unusual in the last 7 years?" After ending the call, Elon tried to make sense of what he'd learned. His father claimed to have developed working fusion technology and said Blackwood was trying to steal it. But these photos showed them meeting seemingly as business associates rather than adversaries, and now a journalist was investigating both of them. Elon thought back to his childhood when his father would sometimes test him with puzzles or problems that seem to have missing pieces. Always look for what isn't being said. Errol would tell him that's where the truth often hides, what wasn't his father saying. Now Elon needed more information from someone who knew Pretoria and might have insights into Blackwood's local operations. After a moment's consideration, he made another call to Theo Boa, his childhood friend who still lived in the city. They hadn't spoken in years, but Elon had kept track of Theo's career. Through mutual connections, he'd become a detective with the PTOR police force working on financial crimes and corruption cases. The call went to voicemail. Elon left a message asking Theo to contact him as soon as possible about an urgent personal matter. As evening fell, Elon ordered room service and spread out everything he knew on the desk. His notes about his father's device, the mysterious text messages, the photos of Errol with Blackwood. It wasn't enough to form a complete picture. His phone rang just as he was finishing his meal. It was Theo Elon Musk, his old friend said, sounding surprised, despite